We got some breaking news yesterday. Robert Saleh fired by the New York Jets after a pretty mediocre bad almost 3.5 years as the head coach of the New York Jets. We could show you what he did in terms of his resume. All stats provided by our friends at StatMuse. All graphics provided by my man Alfred Parsar Jr., who, by the way, is a Jets fan. So thanks for making this graphic, Alfred. This is what Robert Saleh has done. 20-36 overall record, 5-14 against divisional teams, 7-19 against playoff teams. The Jets were 7th in defense, and Saleh's defensive guy, but 31st, second to last in the NFL offensively. So simply put, the Jets could stop you. They simply could not score points or really gain that many yards to begin with as a football team during his tenure. So in a vacuum, this was a smart move to make because Robert Saleh, coaches with Saleh's resume do not last more than 3 years. Heck, most of them don't even last 2 years in the National Football League. You talk about the fact that this is a guy, listen, we understand he took over a dysfunctional franchise. All the missed quarterbacks that the Jets have had in their history, haven't made the playoffs since the 2010 season. We get all that. But did you elevate them to a different level? No, you didn't. So in a vacuum, it was the right move. For it to happen after week 5, I think it was the wrong move. And the reason I say that is this. There is no historical precedent for firing a coach at this point in the season and it working at all. Obviously, forget Super Bowl. And the Jets, they have Super Bowl aspirations. Those are delusional in my mind, but that's what they have. Forget Super Bowl. 26 of the last 27 teams who have fired a head coach after week 5, this exact point in the season, 26 of those 27 teams missed the playoffs. So it didn't make a difference. The only exception is the Raiders a few years ago, and Gruden technically was fired. He actually resigned as the head coach of the Raiders because of some situations related to some inappropriate emails, all those different things. So it wasn't necessarily for a lack of good performance by him and by the Las Vegas Raiders. It was just some inappropriate behavior. That was not the case with Robert Saleh, and he was fired yesterday. Here's what I want to talk about, though. And this is why we're going to lead the show with my midweek segment, Carving Up the Context. As the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." Mid-segment on this week's edition of Carving Up the Context to lead a Wednesday show. Normally it's the middle of the Wednesday show. Today it's to lead the show. It is because of this. Aaron Rodgers, as he does every week, goes on the Pat McAfee show. Normally it's on Tuesdays. It happened to be actually today, I think yesterday because of the Saleh news. Didn't want to go on. It would have looked really, really, really bad. Although Aaron didn't exactly cover himself in glory with this recent appearance. Take a listen to what Aaron Rodgers said in relation to folks that are suggesting, hey, maybe he had something to do with Robert Saleh's ousting. Aaron Rodgers, this is what he said today, this afternoon on the McAfee show.
As far as any of the ridiculous allegations out there, I'm not going to spend more than one sentence in response to it, and that is that I resent any of those accusations because they're patently false. And it's interesting the amount of power that people think that I have, which I don't. But I love Robert, and it was, one of those days yesterday.
He says he doesn't have, he said, it's amazing how much control people think that I have, which I don't. I'm sure it's complete coincidence that Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and Nathaniel Hackett and Tim Boyle, I'm sure it's totally, of course they weren't, they were going to the Jets anyway, regardless of Aaron Rodgers was going to be there, despite the fact that Cobb at that point last year was at his prime. Lazard is fine, nothing special. Tim Boyle literally should not even be in the NFL. Check his college numbers, that'll tell you that. And Nathaniel Hackett is, in no other uncertain terms, the worst offensive coordinator in professional football. But I'm sure it had nothing to do with Aaron joining the Jets. Nothing to do with it. Doesn't have as much power as some people might suggest. Let me pose this idea, because I'm not going to come out here in the show and just full-blown, make a blanket statement. I know for a fact that Aaron Rodgers was the sole responsible reason that Robert Saleh lost his job. Not going to say that because there's a number of factors that come into that. Number one, first and foremost, Saleh wasn't that good a coach. That we know. The story is why he was fired now, after week 5, and not toward the end of the season or after the season was over, as what tends to be the case. Jonathan Jones, shout out to him at CBS. He came out with a report yesterday. I'm shocked, utterly shocked at how much this has flown under the radar, but he reported this, and I quote, ousted Jets head coach Robert Saleh was considering firing offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett before he himself was fired Tuesday morning, end quote. This is from one source. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but this is out there from a professional, credible journalist. That Nathaniel Hackett was going to lose his job. He should have never had the job to begin with, but that was going to be the case. And just total coincidence, Saleh was fired that morning. Also, what I think is not a matter of coincidence is that according to reporters, Woody Johnson himself, Aaron Rodgers, Woody Johnson, owner of the Jets, and Aaron Rodgers had a phone conversation Monday night. So they played the game Sunday morning, or at least Sunday morning Eastern time, over across the pond in London, fly back to New York. I'm sure they probably had the day off on Monday as well as on Tuesday, get back in the building on Wednesday. The owner, the quarterback have a phone conversation Monday night. Woody Johnson confirmed it. Aaron Rodgers confirmed it. Media's confirmed it. So I'm supposed to believe that Aaron Rodgers, or that Woody Johnson, rather, just so happened to check on Aaron Rodgers on a random Monday night after a 2-3 start. Just doesn't. By the way, Aaron said in the McAfee show, I mean, he doesn't call me all that often, but he calls from time to time. He called me after I tore my Achilles, which seemed like the nice thing to do. Your quarterback just had a season end coming in heartbreaking fashion. You're going to call him. He doesn't call. This isn't like a week. I mean, I'll tell you this. Woody Johnson, Aaron Rodgers, I would bet every dollar I got that they don't talk as often as Rodgers and McAfee talk, or as much as Rodgers and Hackett or other guys talk, because the owner and the players in the Dallas, that's a little bit different, don't have that tight of a relationship. It's two different ways of going about their business. We understand that. He just so happens to call Aaron Rodgers, and the next morning, Robert Saleh is fired. Total coincidence. It has nothing to do with anything. If nothing else, because I'm not suggesting, I want to be very clear when I say this. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers explicitly and specifically told Woody Johnson in that phone call, I want Saleh out of the building. I want to be abundantly clear. I'm not making that claim whatsoever. What I am saying is this. This wasn't just some Woody Johnson woke up Tuesday morning and, well, guess I'm going to fire my head coach today. No, he's been thinking about this. The reports have been circulating. They've been a dark cloud over the franchise really since that Broncos loss. After they lost that game to Denver when they were almost double-digit favorites in over a touchdown, and in the big game in London against the Minnesota Vikings, they need to win this game for Saleh to keep his job. Though there were reports out there that suggested that. So clearly this was on Woody Johnson's mind. This was, he was thinking about this. And 12 hours before the head coach does indeed get fired, he talks to the quarterback, and there's no mention of Saleh. None. Total coincidence. Doesn't call Aaron much. And then Saleh's fired the next day. What I'm suggesting is that at the very least, Woody Johnson, who's let Aaron call the shots from day one in that organization, to the point where he can literally skip mandatory minicamp, which no other quarterback in the league, save for Trevor Lawrence, which the Jaguars let him do, and other players do, other veteran players do, skips mandatory minicamp to go to Egypt. That Woody didn't at least suggest. Thinking about canning Robert Saleh. Thoughts? What do you think about that, Aaron? And Aaron Rodgers, being the really, slick individual that he is, says he has absolutely nothing to do with that. How could anybody even suggest that? Here's what it comes down to at the end of the day, folks. Your history should matter. Your history should matter when it comes to telling the truth. And the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers is an objectively proven liar. We can go over the list of just some of a few things they said in the past. Some of these things not related to football, of course, and we'll start with those. That the COVID vaccine, agree or disagree with taking that or not, was, quote, experimental gene therapy that changes your DNA. That 9/11 was an inside job. That immigrants who joined the military could turn on America. That late night host Jimmy Kimmel should, quote, be nervous about the Epstein list. Now that we're away from the non-football stuff, let's go to the football stuff. He said a year ago he was 90% retired before he went to some weird dark hole. And by the way, he didn't even finish his entire scheduled time there, but goes in a weird dark hole and he's 90% retired. He comes out, not only am I not retired, I want to go to a new team and go win a Super Bowl for said team. That was a year and a half ago. Aaron Rodgers has not closed the door on coming back next year. So that will be 3 seasons past the claim that he made that he's 90% retired. So he obviously lied about that one. He said last year, still a member of the Green Bay Packers, that when Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of Green Bay, was trying to contact him, that, I guess my phone wasn't working, the service was kind of bad in Malibu, California. What is that, one of the richest neighborhoods? Isn't that like a who's who of celebrities live in Malibu? Yeah, I'm sure the Kardashians have some. I don't know if they live in Malibu, but that's just an example. I'm sure that all the A-list celebrities, the George Clooney's of the world and the Kardashians have some real trouble with Verizon. Come on now, Aaron obviously lied about that. This is my favorite. That any of the BS. Remember this? End of last season. Any of the BS that has nothing to do with football needs to get out of the building. Ironically speaking, Jets mandatory minicamp. Guess who's not in the building? Oh, it's one Aaron Rodgers who felt like a trip to Egypt was more important than building a rapport with receivers he's never gotten in-game experience with. And finally, the last lie that he told. Yeah, man, coach, this is offseason. Yeah, me and Robert Saleh had a great relationship. Call me crazy. If I had a great relationship with somebody and I did something great and my biggest cheerleader over the sideline is happy for me, and I go over to the sideline in the direction of that person and they go for a hug and I push them away and give them a very ominous look as I walk off. Brady and Belichick were buddies. I don't think that would have happened. Robert Saleh should have been fired by the Jets, I think, last year. If you're going to keep him this year, I think he should have at least lasted until December because, again, history shows you fire a coach at this point in the season, your season's a wrap. My man Mike Guido, shout out to Mike, Bi-Coastal Baseball Podcast. Last night in the 8 o'clock spot, he said, their season is officially over because of this, and history would show, yeah, that's usually the case. Well, actually, it's almost always the case if a coach is fired after week 5. So Saleh was not a good coach. I want to be abundantly clear about that. Aaron Rodgers cannot lie to me and say he had nothing to do with this. I flat out do not believe him. If nothing else, by the way, let's just say, I think this is not in the slightest bit backed up by fact, but let's say Aaron had absolutely nothing to do with this, verbally speaking, about Saleh. He absolutely had something to do with Robert Saleh getting fired. You know how I know that? Because of this. The Jets are exactly the same this year as they were last year on offense. Points per game, the same. Yards per game, basically the same. Yards per play, basically the same. Turnovers, pretty much identical. This year's Jets team commits more penalties than last year's Jets offense through 5 games. Same record, 2-3. The whole premise of the Jets being good this season is, well, at least Aaron Rodgers is a heck of a lot better than Zach Wilson. It's the same offense. It's the same squad. They're not doing nothing. Not doing anything. Again, I refuse to believe that it is a coincidence that, according to Jonathan Jones of CBS, Saleh was thinking about firing Hackett. That day he's fired after Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't often talk on the phone to Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, the night before. The dots don't connect to Aaron having nothing to do with this. So he continues to be disingenuous, a flat out. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.